President Trump wants to take control of Greenland, a massive island that belongs to Denmark. But while Trump was making loud threats and demanding control, Canada quietly worked behind the scenes to make smart business deals with Greenland instead. This created one of the biggest surprises in Arctic politics in recent years. Greenland is not just any island, it's the world's largest island, covered mostly in ice but hiding incredible wealth beneath. The island has been part of Denmark for 800 years, but it runs many of its own affairs. The people of Greenland have their own government and make their own decisions about many things, though Denmark still handles foreign policy and defense. If you're interested in more stories about global politics and how countries compete for power and resources, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. Why does everyone want Greenland? Greenland sits on some of the world's most valuable untapped resources, making it like a giant treasure chest buried under ice. Here's what makes it so valuable. Rare earth elements. Greenland has about 38 billion tons of rare earth elements. These are special metals with hard-to-pronounce names like neodymium, graphite, and zirconium. They might sound boring, but they're essential for making smartphones, computers, electric car batteries, wind turbines, and military equipment. Most of these materials currently come from China, so having another source would be incredibly valuable. Oil reserves. Under Greenland's waters and ice, there are an estimated 17 billion barrels of oil. That's enough to supply the entire world for about 6 months, or the United States for about 2.5 years. With oil prices constantly changing and global energy needs growing, this represents hundreds of billions of dollars in potential wealth. Gold and other precious metals. Greenland also has large deposits of gold, silver, and copper. These have been valuable throughout human history and continue to be important for electronics, jewelry, and industrial uses. Strategic location. Beyond its buried treasure, Greenland's location makes it incredibly important for military purposes. It sits between North America and Europe, making it a perfect spot for radar systems and military bases. It also overlooks shipping routes that are becoming more important as Arctic ice melts due to climate change. What Trump said and why. After winning the presidency again in 2024, Trump made Greenland one of his top priorities. This wasn't completely new. He had talked about buying Greenland during his first presidency, but this time he was much more serious and aggressive about it. Trump's arguments for taking control of Greenland included several points. National security. Trump's military advisors told him that Greenland's northern coast created a blind spot in America's radar systems. This blind spot could allow Russian submarines to sneak closer to North America without being detected early. They argued that controlling Greenland would close this gap and make America safer. Competition with China. Trump was particularly worried about China getting access to Greenland's rare earth elements. China already controls most of the world's supply of these crucial materials, and Trump feared that if America didn't act, China would make deals with Greenland and gain even more control over these resources. Economic benefits. With all those resources under Greenland's ice, Trump saw an opportunity to make America much wealthier and more self-sufficient. He argued that controlling these resources would create American jobs and reduce dependence on other countries. Arctic control. As climate change melts Arctic ice, new shipping routes and resource extraction opportunities are opening up. Trump wanted America to be the dominant power in this changing Arctic landscape. By March 2025, Trump's approach became much more aggressive. Instead of just talking about buying Greenland, he started talking about taking control of it one way or another. This language worried many people because it sounded like he might be willing to use force. How Greenland and Denmark responded. The response from Greenland and Denmark was swift and very negative. Greenlandic leaders felt insulted and disrespected by Trump's demands. Greenland's reaction. Greenland's leaders were particularly angry because Trump seemed to treat their homeland like a piece of property that could be bought and sold. They reminded everyone that Greenland had been part of the Danish kingdom for 800 years and that its people had their own culture, language, and identity. One Greenlandic official directly addressed Trump, saying Mr. Trump off, a polite way of telling him to go away. Denmark's position. Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, made it crystal clear that Greenland was not for sale at any price. She emphasized that Greenland belonged to its people and that Denmark would respect whatever the Greenlandic people decided about their future. However, she also made it clear that selling the island to America was not an option. Joint statement. In mid-March 2025, both the Greenlandic government and the Danish parliament issued a joint statement rejecting any discussion of transferring sovereignty to the United States. They warned that any attempt by America to use force or extreme pressure would damage NATO, the military alliance that includes both America and Denmark. What Canada did instead, while Trump was making loud demands and threats, Canada was quietly working on a completely different approach. Instead of trying to take control of Greenland, Canada focused on building business partnerships that would benefit everyone involved. Two Canadian companies led this effort. Greenland Resources Incorporated had originally focused on mining projects in Ontario, Canada, but saw a huge opportunity in Greenland. The company specialized in extracting molybdenum, a metal that's essential for making high-strength steel. As Europe's demand for this metal grew, the company realized Greenland could be a perfect source. Amarok Minerals, the second company, was interested in Greenland's gold deposits. They had been studying the Nalunak gold project, which had been sitting idle due to logistical challenges. With fresh funding and new technology, they believed they could make it profitable. The $3 billion deal. By March 2025, these Canadian companies had secured a massive $3 billion mining agreement with Greenland. This wasn't just a purchase, it was a partnership that would benefit Greenland's economy for decades to come. The deal included a 30-year mining license, direct shipment of materials to European markets, training and jobs for Greenlandic workers, environmental protections, a share of profits for Greenland's government. European support. What made this deal possible was support from European institutions. The European Investment Bank's Green Fund provided financing, and Denmark's Export Credit Agency helped guarantee the investments. This showed that Europe was willing to put real money behind keeping Greenland out of American control. Funding sources. The funding for these projects came from various sources, including Denmark's investment arm, Norway's pension fund, and private equity groups in the UK and the US. Ironically, some American investors unknowingly helped Canadian companies beat America to Greenland's resources. How this affects America. The Canadian success in Greenland created serious problems for American businesses and the US government. Supply chain disruptions. American companies that needed molybdenum for steel production suddenly found it much harder and more expensive to get. This affected everything from building construction to car manufacturing. Defense industry impact. The US defense industry was hit particularly hard. Lockheed Martin had to postpone tests of hypersonic missiles because they couldn't get the materials they needed. Raytheon had to find new suppliers in Australia and Chile, which were more expensive and less reliable. Electric vehicle problems. The growing American electric vehicle industry depends heavily on rare earth elements for batteries. With Greenland's resources going to Europe instead of America, American EV manufacturers faced higher costs and supply shortages. Inflation effects. The Biden administration's Inflation Reduction Act included incentives for clean energy production, but these incentives depended on having access to the right materials. Greenland's pivot to Europe made these materials more expensive for American companies. Strategic disadvantage. Perhaps most importantly, America lost out on a chance to reduce its dependence on China for critical materials. Instead of diversifying its supply chains, America found itself even more dependent on potentially unreliable sources. What other countries did? The Greenland situation created ripple effects throughout the international community. Norway, as a fellow Nordic country and NATO member, Norway strongly supported Denmark's position. Norway also had its own Arctic interests and didn't want to see America become too dominant in the region. France took a particularly strong stance, sending a nuclear submarine to patrol Baffin Bay near Greenland. This was a clear message that Europe would protect its new Arctic interests militarily if necessary. France also committed funding to help build a new airport in Greenland. Poland, which depends heavily on American military protection, chose to stay silent on the issue. This was likely because Poland didn't want to damage its relationship with Washington, but it also didn't want to openly oppose fellow EU members. European Union. The EU as a whole supported the Canadian Greenlandic Partnership because it fit with their Critical Raw Materials Act from 2023. This law was designed to reduce Europe's dependence on Chinese materials, and Greenland offered a perfect alternative. The bigger economic picture. The Canadian Greenlandic Partnership created a new economic structure in the Arctic that went far beyond just mining. Energy projects. Cedar Energy, a Canadian firm, began planning a floating liquefied natural gas plant near Disco Bay in Greenland. This project would target European and Asian buyers, offering an alternative to both Russian gas, which Europe was trying to avoid, and American LNG exports. Green energy integration. The materials from Greenland's mines weren't just valuable on their own, they were essential for Europe's transition to clean energy. Byproducts like silver and copper supported the EU's blue hydrogen initiative, which aimed to create clean fuel from renewable energy. Financial independence. The structure of the deals ensured that Greenland would build up its own future fund, a pool of money that would make the island less dependent on any single country. This was similar to what Norway had done with its oil wealth. Infrastructure development. The mining projects required new roads, ports, and communication systems. This infrastructure would benefit all of Greenland's people, not just the mining companies. Long-term consequences. The fight over Greenland revealed important changes in how international power works in the 21st century. Economic power vs. military power. Canada's success showed that economic partnerships and mutual benefits could be more effective than military threats. While Trump talked tough, Canada offered real benefits to Greenland. Alliance strain. The dispute created the first serious crack in NATO unity in years. America found itself opposed by several of its closest allies, which weakened its position in other international disputes. Arctic governance. The Arctic is becoming increasingly important as climate change opens new possibilities for shipping and resource extraction. This dispute established that the Arctic's future would be shaped by partnerships rather than dominance by any single country. Supply chain realities. The situation demonstrated how global supply chains had become weapons in international competition. Control over materials could be just as important as control over territory. What this means for the future. This story shows several important lessons about how international relations work in the modern world. Diplomacy vs. force. Canada's patient, partnership-based approach proved more effective than Trump's aggressive demands. This suggests that in an interconnected world, cooperation often works better than confrontation. Economic integration. The ties between Canada, Europe, and Greenland created a new power structure that didn't depend on any single dominant country. This kind of multilateral cooperation may become more common as countries seek alternatives to American or Chinese dominance. Resource competition. The fight over Greenland showed how competition for natural resources is becoming a central part of international relations. As the world transitions to clean energy and new technologies, control over rare materials will become increasingly important. Climate change impact. The entire dispute was made possible by climate change, which is making Arctic resources more accessible. This suggests that climate change will continue to reshape international politics in unexpected ways. The Arctic region is now controlled by a partnership between Canada, Europe, and Greenland, not by America alone, as Trump wanted. This new arrangement may prove more stable and beneficial for everyone involved than the old system of single-country dominance. What do you think this shift means for the Arctic and the balance of power between old allies? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into geopolitics,